All right. Hello. My name's Clay Canfield. I'm the founder of Sobriety Hub software for sober livings. And I'm here today with my friend Adam Moulton. Adam is the founder of the Reverence House, which is located in central New Hampshire in the Lakes region. Adam, thanks for being with me. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, Clay. I am honored, literally, to be on this. I've been working with you guys for, I don't know, 6 months anyways now, and big fan of what you guys are doing. And I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm stoked that you're here and excited to kind of formalize, learning a little bit more about, Reverence House. And I know you've been very successful, so I wanna kind of spread that success and spread that knowledge. Um, so just starting out, if you could kind of give us some background on what inspired you to start Reverence House, and the founding story, that would be great.
Yeah, so I was born and raised here. I lived here for the majority of my life. And really I always wanted to run recovery homes. I've lived in many bad ones, and I've lived in very good ones. I always wanted to run recovery homes. I could never get my life together to do so. And then I finally, went out to California. I did schooling. Went out to California to go to treatment. Completed treatment, went to schooling. Actually, became a clinical therapist at the same treatment center that I went to. And I was there for a few years, and I always knew that I would come back home to New Hampshire. This is my home. It's the most beautiful place in the world to me. And I did. I made a leap. I left a very beautiful place with a very comfortable job that allowed me to have massive amounts of purpose, and it was a very, very scary thing for me. But I did it. I needed to come home. I wanted to come home, and ultimately, it was a big part of my amends. Believe it or not, I played a massive part of the destruction of this city. So for me to now play a part in kind of the rebuilding and the cleaning up of the city was a significant reason as to why I wanted to do this here rather than out in California. So I'd say that's probably why I did this. Been a long time coming, long plan. But finally got my life together and was afforded the ability to do it.
That's super cool. Yeah, kind of coming back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, and
Absolutely.
cleaning it up. That's
Yep.
awesome. Um, so I know that I think, a month or 2 months ago, you guys expanded and opened a new house. How was that process?
Yeah. So, well, the beginning process was a little bit brutal just because of the situation where there was existing tenants in the home that I bought, which was unfortunate, and that in itself was a pretty unfortunate process that I'm actually still dealing with today, months and months later. But when that got handled, and I already had an existing house, they're a rock throw from each other, so that's a big it's a big plus having two houses that are literally right near each other.
Yeah, that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, and I already had a really strong house with strong guys in it and guys that wanted to step up and were ready to step up. And when I got the other home and everybody found out and knew that it was happening, it actually was quite easy. In regard to, I wasn't starting from scratch like I was initially. That was hard. Um but with the houses being so close, the Reverence House truly is a family. I mean, there's a culture behind it. It's a family of men who are all right there to help each other, and that includes, I'm a part of that family. So when I need help, I have the guys that are ready, and they want it, that beg for it. So it really wasn't that difficult of a transition. Um, I think that if the homes were probably farther away, it would be a little bit more difficult. Both of the houses are set up where if you live in one of them, you have all the access to the other one as well. So it expanded the family.
Mm.
Um, so really, the only thing that I have received so far from this is only an immense amount of benefits.
Gotcha. And so is the new house, is that kind of like a step down or another phase, or is it all the same?
No, no, it's the same. And again, I actually, that is part of my plans as well, is to be, because we severely lack those specific houses that you're talking about, those step down houses. So no, this is the same type of house because we also really lack these ones. New Hampshire is a very small city, a small state, and we have massive problems here with mental health and substance abuse. So really, for me, it's about getting homes up and running so that we can have more beds in the state for the people that need it. There's a much higher demand than there is the availability of beds here. So I do plan to do the transitional step down type house. That is absolutely a part of my plans, but this second house was not that.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a good segue into kind of like what are your plans for the next 5 years? Do you want to kind of grow rapidly and add more houses, or do you want to kind of build out what you currently have? What do you have in stock?
So I'm a big planner.
Okay.
I have a lot of lofty goals, and I think that I I come from a clinical background. That is actually how again I started in this field, was working clinically in treatment. Um, and that I think is the direction that I probably want to end up going, primarily, which is to open up treatment centers. I live in a state, and I'm pretty outspoken about this, including with the state people here in New Hampshire. We are terrible at this. We are really, really bad at treating substance abuse and mental health here in the state of New Hampshire.
Mm.
The treatment centers are very short time. You're kind of typical 28-day treatment centers. And, the, I was blessed to go through a treatment center that was long term. I was there for almost 7 months, and we do not graduate clients until we believe that they are ready to move on in the world, regardless of insurance. That's a doesn't matter. And we don't have those here in the state of New Hampshire. We just don't. We don't have long-term treatment centers. We don't have good clinical care. We just don't. So my whole plan here is to make a difference in my home. And while, yes, I believe that I am already doing that, I am competitive in nature. And I want to keep doing it. And I want to continue to expand. Currently, I only have men's homes. I want women's homes. I would love to have homes where children could come to, single
Hmm.
mothers, single fathers. Of course, your step down houses. But in the state that I live in, we really lack good treatment. In fact, I would go as far as to say that people get, and I think that this is actually pretty well known here in the state of New Hampshire, people get a lot more, people come much farther in the recovery and recovery homes than they actually even do in the treatment centers. If it were up to me, the treatment centers would be more so considered of a long-term detox, because the brain simply is not ready after 28 days. Post-acute withdrawals is a long process. And when a person is 28 days sober, their brain is not in a position at that point to just go take the world on.
Right.
So we need longer treatment centers. So that is my plan. Of course, the homes would continue to expand with it. But my more loftier goals is better treatment for the state of New Hampshire.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty well documented, right? That, the 28 days is, barely gets you dried out, right? Let alone enough time to find an entirely new way to go about life. Um, so that's cool. I mean, structured sober livings like the one that you operate, and more long-term treatment, I guess, are real difference makers in terms of actual outcomes.
Yeah, and I just think that an important point of, I guess, what I'm trying to make is that I've done the 28-day treatment centers, and nobody ever told me before going in there, like, hey, check it out, man, this 28-day treatment center is actually not really going to set you up for life. it is a place where you're going to dry out for 28 days. You're going to get maybe a small set of tools that you might be able to use in the real world. In regards to the therapeutic aspects of a 28-day treatment center, it's next to impossible to do actual any type of trauma work with a person in 28 days. As a clinician, there are it could take 4 sessions simply just to build rapport with the person before you even start digging into any of
Right.
the difficult things. So at a 28-day treatment center, if you're getting one therapy appointment a week, that's just rapport. That isn't actually any, in my opinion, that's not adequate.
Yeah.
So, there should be waivers signed. There should be education within these 28-day treatment centers of like, hey, check it out. This is not all of it. You should probably continue, do another IOP that maybe is another 3-4 months, and get into recovery living and things of that nature. I know insurance is a significant kind of blockade in a lot of this, which is another travesty. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I believe that 28-day treatment centers in large, not all, but in large, a lot of times set people up to fail. And because they aren't told that it's not enough, uh, they in turn blame themselves for fail. And then they start to adopt this belief that they are broken and that they can't be fixed, when in reality, I don't believe that they were ever actually put in a
Mm.
situation to succeed.
Yeah, that's an interesting notion. I mean, if 28-day treatment is the de facto solution, and it's perceived as a solution, but it doesn't
Right.
work for you, then I mean I can see how that can have a an unfortunate effect on just optimism and
Confidence, self-esteem, right? I mean, self-worth. I mean, it's all encompassing,
yeah,
all encompassing. And all a clinician had to tell him the entire time was, hey, check it out, man. This is not enough for you. You need more.
right, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So longer term treatment and probably more robust sober living, right? Like if the treatment or if the insurance system isn't going to change overnight, um, what can we do about it now? More robust sober living, which I know you guys have a pretty rigorous program. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about like what you have your guys do and kind of what makes Reverence House unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's your generic kind of just basic guidelines that I think should exist in all homes. We of course have that. Ours are also instilled. Um, but it's a biopsychosocial thing. So there's very limited there's limited things that a recovery house can do for the biopsycho part of that, but the social part of that, I think, really is kind of where the recovery homes can make quite the impact. So the point behind that is that it is literally a family. I do not allow isolation. I don't. It's not
Mm,
going to happen in my house. That mimics active addiction, and we are social animals. And I'm an introverted guy myself. I like to be alone. But I can also acknowledge that that's not really how we're built, and you need to have that pillar of social connection in your life. So I put a lot of emphasis and focus on that, which has done wonders. I mean, like I said, it has literally built a family. It has built a culture. People move in because of the culture. They hear about it, and they want a piece of that. In regards to like the UAs and things like that, every single resident gets UA'd 3 times a week, every single week, and their schedule changes every single week. So they had never have any idea when a UA is coming. In regards to breathalyzers, anytime that a person leaves the property and comes back, there's a breathalyzer sitting right next to the door. You have to find the closest resident to you, and you have to breathalyze for them. So, structure, accountability, very, very high. Responsibility is also very, very high.
mm,
Almost, and I'm a big kind of like Jocko Willink, and and Navy SEAL guy, extreme ownership. So really taking responsibility over your reality, really taking responsibility over the fact that while you may not have been dealt the best deck of cards, and while your past is not your fault, it is now your responsibility to fix. And that is on the resident. That was on me. I am, of course, a massive advocate of therapy. Therapy is what really saved my life. Of course, it's not mandated, but it is strongly encouraged to the point where, you have to do a 90 when you move into my home. So you have to go to one meeting a day for 90 days. After that, it's 5 a week. But I do allow people to replace an AA meeting with therapy. If they think that therapy is more beneficial to them for AA, by all means, then do therapy. And if you do therapy, then I'll count that as one of your meetings. I also do a lot of education. So I used to teach addiction education. So the Wednesday night house meetings, we don't go over a lot of house stuff. The last Wednesday of the month, that's what that's for. The other Wednesdays are for education. So I teach CBT, I teach DBT, I teach REBT, all these little acronyms. But I also teach, stress regulation, emotional regulation tools. I teach attachment, which I think is fundamentally important to every single relationship that people are in. And attachment isn't even really taught in treatment centers. So my recovery relies on therapy and education. I don't personally go to AA or NA. I did. It was a part of my story. I have been a sponsor. I have sponsored people. I have gone through the steps. I have taken other people through the steps. So I try to, in treatment, every individual gets their own treatment plan because we as humans are different fundamentally from each other. And I do my best to implement that in the recovery home. It is difficult to do that because it's not a treatment setting. But with my experience in treatment setting, I oftentimes will do that. So I regularly have guys, AA isn't for me. I can't do AA, blah, blah, blah. You got to do a little bit of it in my house, but I also offer different things. If you want to do your therapy, perfect. There's a meeting. I also have educational podcasts that are based in neuroscience and psychology, and really provide people with in the moment tools that they can use to live. And those podcasts go anywhere from an hour. Some of them are 2 hours. And if people want to sit down and watch those and fill out, of course, questionnaires so that we know that they watch them, that's another option that I provide for people to replace AA meetings or NA or whatever A they decide to pick. So it's just different. I'm not aware of any home, at least in the state of New Hampshire, that provides those things. And I think just my focus on the educational aspect. I do not talk about drugs and alcohol very much in my addiction education because to me it's not all that relevant. Drugs and alcohol were not my problem. They were my attempt at a solution to a problem. Therefore, putting the focus on drugs and alcohol, I think in large is a waste of time, actually. I, of course, go over post-acute withdrawals, things like that. So, of course, that's absolutely related to drugs and alcohol. It's very important. Anhedonia, things of that nature, which everybody experiences in post-acute withdrawals. But I really focus on how to live in this world effectively. And really, I do not like how we live in a country and a culture that treats symptoms. I just don't. I don't think it's all that helpful. I think that we need to get down to the bottom of why this thing is happening. And just by simply treating symptoms for years and years and years and years and years isn't really cutting it. So I really like that kind of deep down, aspect of this whole thing. I think that's where the meat and potatoes are. That's where the magic is, the internal, the down low. Focusing on drugs and alcohol is, in large, I think, a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like you hear about, whack-a-mole, right? Like, you can get sober, but if the underlying problems aren't addressed, like with the things that you've mentioned in terms of therapy and trauma work, we're just going to come up with another maladaptive solution, even if we are able to stay physically clean.
Absolutely.
Um, so responsibility, responsibility is huge. I know you're a big self-esteem guy. Um, you know, I love that. I mean, if we believe that we are worth something, then we're less likely to annihilate ourselves, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I tell guys all the time, you have to build a life that's not worth sacrificing.
Mm,
You
yeah.
have to build a life that is not worth sacrificing. And it's really hard to do that when you have the inner issues that haven't been properly dealt with yet. It makes things very, very hard because trauma really just kind of lives in the shadows of our lives without our permission. More often than not, we don't actually even know a lot of those kind of reflexive behaviors that come from the trauma itself. So we're just navigating the world thinking that it's how we should be doing it. Um, you know, when in fact there are probably more adaptive ways to do that. But you cannot fix what does not exist. So if I am not speaking to the right people, if I do not have a therapist, if I don't have professionals in my life pointing these things out for me, who's going to do that? Which is what I think that I like to think that I can do that with people.
Yeah, for sure. So Reverence House, taking a scientific approach, taking a practical approach and helping people build lives that they don't want to risk destroying. Um, so just to shift notes a little bit here,
Sure.
you guys have been using Sobriety Hub to kind of facilitate that accountability and to keep track of your residents. Um, how has that been going? What's your experience been, utilizing the Sobriety Hub web app?
Sure. So I'm a structure guy. I almost have to operate in structure. While of course I do quite well in chaos as well, the structure is now where I prefer to be. And it's also something that, in regards to the organizational aspect of my life, I have struggled with. I am kind of known for like losing things. And I thought that that would go away when I got clean. And for some odd reason, it hasn't. So, having a very detailed, organized platform for me to be able to have everything I need on one screen is hard to beat. Because prior to that, I had filing cabinets and papers all over the place, and it's not it's not effective for me. It's not helpful for me, and being able to use this strictly for the organizational aspect of things has been absolutely phenomenal. But when it comes to the notes, like I love the mood note. It's got to be has to be my favorite one. I really like the mood note because I come from a treatment center that prior, before, and after every single modality, you would check in with a number 1 through 10. And you would do it before, you would do it after, you would kind of determine what that modality did to your overall mood, not necessarily emotional state, but mood, which is different. Um, I have been able to adapt, take that and almost implement it into my own home. So, there are mood notes on every single resident where I can actually track that over weeks, and I can say, okay, he is typically at a 7 or an 8, and over the past couple of weeks, he's been down there at like a 6. And of course, these are it's the house leaders that are the ones making these calls, so they're of course human error, and it's impossible to tell what another person is thinking or feeling with
Right.
any level of extreme accuracy. But it is a phenomenal tool. It is a wonderful tool where I can tell how a person is doing solely off of those mood notes. I'm also very engaged in the houses, so I can track it that way too. But yeah, I mean, all especially the newer functions with the application attached to it and automatically creating a new resident icon, brilliant. That saves me a lot of time. Um, yeah, overall, I love it. I think it's needed, and from a price standpoint, it was absolutely cheaper than all of the competitors. that at least I looked into, and yeah, huge fan, huge fan. I'm trying to think of like, I use the vast majority of everything. But I know I bugged you a lot about the rental aspect of it. That was a significant portion of my time was spent doing that, because it's like my least favorite aspect of what I do.
Right.
Um, so having something being able to streamline that part of it absolutely, saves me massive amounts of time. But yeah, I mean, the notes, the ability to just have all of the residents right there, immediately discharged into alumni. You could check alumni. There are unfortunately people that are not allowed back at my house. And it's useful to have that tool on there so that 3, 4, years from now, not necessarily that I still wouldn't allow them back, but it would remind me,
Sure.
of like, hey, this was an individual where 4 years ago I actually put him on the cannot return list, and I need to have a conversation with him prior to moving forward, if we move forward at all. So yeah, I mean, overall, it's hard for me to. We would end up sitting here for 45 minutes to an hour going over all of the things that it provides for me. I am a massive proponent of time. Time is very, very, very valuable to me. And when I can have something like this save me a lot of time, it's very hard to not partake in that.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you for the awesome endorsement. Is there anybody that you'd want to kind of shout out that's helped you get to go from, the multiple treatment centers, as a patient to, returning to New Hampshire and kind of making a new name for yourself and making a positive impact? Is there anybody you want to shout out that's helped you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, immediately I would start with my family. My family had every opportunity for years and years and years and years and years to stop with me. And
Mm.
they had every real right to. And they didn't. They refused. And their constant love, care, compassion, need for their son and brother and uncle to be better really is kind of what kept me fighting for a long time. Um, Based on my own confidence and self-esteem, I had no reason to fight for myself. Um, so I would have to start with my family. After that, it would be my two therapists. I was lucky enough to again go to a kind of a once in a lifetime treatment center, and I am going to tout it, Treehouse Recovery in California. It is fundamentally, in my opinion, there is not another treatment center in this world that does
Mm.
things like them. And I have to honor the owners, specifically Justin, my two therapists, one of which was a Green Beret. Vietnam is kind of a big military-esque aspect to the program. It's not military, but it's physical, responsibility, structure, taking direction. So all of the staff there, I would have to give massive amounts of thanks and gratitude for. But specifically my therapists, they forced me to, you know, do that, do the really hard stuff that for many years I promised myself I would never do. And in my opinion, it was those very things that kept me very, very sick. So I have, they they will forever hold a massive piece of my heart. My girlfriend, she's a normie. She's not like me. She doesn't really get it. But she has been nothing but supportive. And it also kind of, it seems to anyways, motivate her to do good things for people in the world. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that those would be the main things. But I will always revert back to I am the one that put that work in, not my therapist, not the owner of the treatment center, not my parents. And I might get a lot of shit for this, but not even my higher power. You know, I am the one that puts this work in. And the most important relationship that I have in my life is with that man in the mirror. And if that relationship is not good, my life is not good. So
Mm.
it is a constant daily effort of building the relationship with the man in the mirror and putting in every ounce of effort and work I can into every single day challenging myself to be better than the day I was before. I am the only person I compete against. I compete against my yesterday every single day.
Awesome. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for jumping on. Is there any last words you'd want to share?
No, I don't think so. I mean, well, I say that, and then here I go about to start talking. I just think that a general thing that really, empathy. The world needs more empathy and education and advocacy of, you know, the underdog. And I think that in large, or at least a lot of what I see is, a climate. There's large demographics of people that have no empathy for people that struggle. And I would just ask that anybody who reads or watches this and sees this, just if you don't already possess massive amounts of empathy for those who struggle, I challenge you to challenge your own beliefs and kind of dogmatic thinking and find a way to empathize with those who struggle, because I believe that individuals who are in recovery are very unique. I don't believe there are a lot of people in the world that have experienced the polarizing opposites of the world, as people in recovery, and especially those who have gained long-term recovery, the ability to see the darkest of hells and the brightest of, it's a very unique demographic of people that I think the general public could learn a massive amount from if they just gave themselves the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. And yeah, I'm sure this will be a great video, and have a great rest of your day.
Clay, you're the man. I appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you too.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good one.